I bought some slabs online for the first time, and although I hadn't seen them in person, I had a plan to make you all happy, because last time I made a no epoxy river table, the feedback was unbelievably consistent. So with nothing but you and the word contrast on my mind, I started working on a new design. But just shoving a lighter piece of wood between this walnut isn't good enough. This coffee table needs something special. Oh my gosh, dude, that is so sick. Oh yeah. This video is sponsored by Mileseey and the XTAPE1. Having slabs delivered right to your front door seems like a pretty hassle-free idea. But apparently, just wrapping this thing in cardboard isn't going to stop Phil from just tossing it around and breaking off one of the most important pieces. So after quickly fixing that, I can finally get a better look at these slabs. And I would say overall that I'm pretty happy, but these slabs are far from perfect. For example, you may have already noticed these two numbers, which represent the thickness of each slab, and they obviously aren't the same number. So not only am I starting with two uneven slabs, but neither of them are actually flat either. Plus this one's corner gets really thin. Honestly, these are all pretty standard things that happen when you work with slabs, which is why one of the first steps before you can really do anything is flattening them. And I've tried multiple ways of doing this. I've tried a DIY version directly on my workbench. Then I built a sort of bed for a slab flattener to ride on, but I used MDF and it literally fell apart the first time I tried to move it, which is what brings us here, a fully framed, flattened bed made of 2x4s. And I'm not sure if this is the answer either. I don't know. I guess I'm on a quest to find the best and easiest way to flatten slabs without having to buy like a $30,000 machine that I don't have room for anyway. Back to the project where I'm doing all of this preliminary work so that I can get these slabs as clean as possible and figure out how I want to configure them. And if you've watched my videos before, then you know that sometimes I get a little bit of indecision when it comes to this step. And sometimes that leads to me asking for someone else's opinion. Now, if you've watched enough of my videos, then you'll know that precisely just 2 times that my dad has been the person that I called on. And it just so happens that those 2 have the most views out of all my videos. So, of course, in his words, he's the special sauce, baby. Well, today we find out. Before we make any design decisions, just for reference and a little bit of background, let me tell you how we got here. On the last no epoxy river table, we had 2 options on how we were going to fill the river between the 2 slabs. We ended up choosing the design where we cut a bunch of thin strips and basically squished them between the 2 slabs to make them follow the curves of the live edge. So this time we're going to go with the option that we didn't choose, which is to fill the river with a full piece of maple by shaping the edge of each side to match the live edge that it meets up with. Now that we know how we're going to fill the river for this one, we need to start thinking about the orientation of these slabs and which way we're going to place them. I just need a second opinion on that. This one has a really nice grain, but it has way more checks and cracks. So flip this one over. Just a different grain pattern, but a little less cracking and problems. And we can still flip them around and mess with them, but...
Yeah, it depends on where you're going to use this, but I love this heart right here.
Okay, all right, I'm going to set this one here, pull that one out there. On this one, I feel like our hands are tied a little bit more because even though I glued this piece that broke off, it's never going to look right with the crack going through it. This edge has to be the live edge side.
Flip it over. Yeah. No doubt, this side.
That side?
Yeah, because this has symmetrical colors to match the symmetrical colors here. They totally look like they go together.
I know we already decided that we like this side better, but putting this bump out here, you know?
Yeah. And you got the symmetrical colors like you would have had on the other side. So.
Yeah. Okay, the second thing that we have to decide is the size of the table.
I was waiting for you to tell me about that.
I'm choosing between 36 inches or 40 inches.
Yeah.
4 inches doesn't sound like a lot of difference on a round table. Basically adding 2 inches to either side. Your river just got 4 inches wider. Let's look at 36 inches first.
There's my choice for 36.
Okay.
Let's bring the big guy over.
So we're gonna have to move the slabs out. That's 40. Your river gets
bigger,
a fair bit wider.
No doubt, this one. Wood, second effect of what you're gonna do to have more balance with the piece.
Yeah.
This one, more river. Look saucy, man. Go for it.
All right. You heard the man. The layout has been chosen. I'm gonna get some chalk to outline it so that I have a reference moving forward, and then we can start working on these edges. If I were making an epoxy table, I would clean up these edges with a wire wheel just to get all of the debris and bark and everything off of it. But preparation for a no epoxy ripper table is pretty different. If I'm going to attach another piece of wood directly to this, the face of this edge needs to be 90 degrees. On this one, I'm gonna try to follow the real live edge as closely as possible. I still need to clean up the live edge, but instead of the whole face, I only need about 1/4 of an inch from the top. That'll allow me to take a pattern bit and have the router right along it to start the new edge down. Okay, I haven't had a chance to ask yet, but if you think that my dad is truly the secret weapon to creating better YouTube videos that get more views, use the words special sauce in a comment below so that he and I both know the truth. All right, I've got both of the slabs up here now, and if you didn't notice, I had a lot less material to clear on that second one, which seems pretty cool at first, right? Just less work, less material to clear out. But let me explain why it's not so great. On the first one, you can see that the live edge face is pretty flat and at a 90-degree angle for almost the entire slab. And that's because most of the material that had to be removed was sticking out at the bottom. And in perfect contrast, you'll see on the second slab that this one's actually angled in. 80 to 90% of this live edge doesn't have a flat face. It's definitely gonna cause a big challenge later on because I don't have much of a face to connect the board that's gonna act as the river to. That's another problem for another day, and one that I honestly really don't wanna face, but I don't have any other options. So I'm gonna keep moving forward with this exact shape and hope that I can figure it out later. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the contrast. This is a giant piece of ambrosia maple. And while this thing is beautiful, the best thing about it is how wide it is. It's gonna allow me to cover the entire river with just one single piece, which means that there won't be any seams or glue ups. The only problem? It's thicker than the slabs are right now. And this is why I recently upgraded my planer. Not only is it wide enough to handle the board, but it also has a digital readout which allows me to get precise thickness. And this obviously isn't sponsored. I bought the planer used on Facebook Marketplace, along with almost every tool that you see in my shop. Now that I've got all of these pieces to the same thickness and a rough outline for where the cuts need to go on the river piece, things are getting very technical because I've got to make some precise cuts for all of this to line up perfectly. And I've tested more templates than I can count at this point on the bandsaw and different router setups, and I think I know what I'm going to do. This is where things start to get a little bit complicated. Or maybe technical is the right word, because the actual things that I need to do don't require a ton of skill, but there's a lot of little things that have to happen in a certain order with lots of little steps in between to accomplish what I'm trying to do. The first thing that I have to do is make a new master template, and both sides of the slabs will follow this new line. The technical aspects of this work a lot like doing an inlay. Using a bushing on my router, I can follow the template to create a new edge on the slab, and this basically acts as the first puzzle piece. Now, this does unfortunately mean that the edge that I created earlier now has to be taken back just a little bit. Now on to the second piece of the puzzle. And you'll see that I just added a little bearing to the bushing. And honestly, this is the part that hurts my brain to even think about. Because I'm using an 1/8 inch router bit, I have to offset this cut on the second piece by 1/8 of an inch. And that's what makes these two pieces match up perfectly. Or at least it's supposed to. I cannot believe this works so well. I mean, I thought it would. But goodness, this looks so good. Now I just have to do it again for the other side. One of the things that's really important when you're setting the new edge with the template is making sure that your router isn't tilting at all. I'm using this extended router plate with a handle for perfect balance. And this thing is sold by some DIY hack named Whitworks. And he just passed 300,000 subscribers here on YouTube. I don't know. I guess some people like him. Anyway, let's see if this works. Oh my gosh, dude. That is so sick. I've got one more design feature to take care of before I can glue these three pieces together. But now that I feel confident about the size of the top, I'm going to switch gears and start on the base. A lot of times when I start sketching something, bringing them into real life can be a little bit difficult. There's scale to think about, and proportions can be a little bit different in real life. So a lot of times when I know that I'm going to be working with a template, I like to draw a life-size version of it. But the angles on this one really had me struggling, and I needed some help. Can you come hop on the bench right here?
Yep. You're already filming it and I don't even know what I'm going to be saying.
I'm trying to make this squiggly leg.
Yeah.
On this board right here.
How are you supposed to draw that?
I need your help. The wood actually makes exactly the perfect line that I need. There's just one small problem.
What? You can't hold it while drawing it.
Exactly.
So are you going to do the holding or the drawing?
Well, I thought you would rather do the drawing.
Definitely.
Okay. Having a third hand in this situation definitely helped. However, as quickly as my apprentice showed up, she also disappeared, which basically just left me to sketching this thing out as I went. Okay, I have to admit something here. I'm about to use my bandsaw, which I bought off of Facebook Marketplace. And if you know anything about coiling and uncoiling these blades, then you know it can get a little bit sketchy. Somehow in this process, this 1/4 inch blade got flipped backwards. Anyway, that whole last cut was made with the blade facing the wrong direction. I finished up my template here and I've got the board that I'm going to use to make the legs. I've been messing around with a few different layouts to make sure that I have the least amount of waste possible. And here's what I've come up with. Usually to make a leg like this, I would take 2 pieces and make a pretty simple L shape. However, because this stock is so wide, I have the ability to do something a little bit better. I'm actually going to use 2 pieces side by side. And there's 2 advantages when it comes to doing it this way. The first is just aesthetically, you get all of the grain running one direction, which looks a lot better. And also this is much better structurally because I'm getting to glue up 2 edge grain pieces for a much stronger joint than if I was using end grain. But before I can do any of that, I've got to clean this board up, which is why I'm running it through the planer. I've been asked multiple times about whether I use AI in my videos, and I'm pretty certain it's because my speaking cadence when I do voiceovers can be, I don't know, maybe come off as a little bit unnatural. And of course, that makes me a little bit self-conscious about it now. But hey, it gives me something to work on, and I'm very appreciative for that feedback. Anyway, to answer the question about whether I use AI in my videos and projects, the answer is mostly no. Occasionally, I'll use it for a photo rendering or to try and get some specific measurements, but even for example, when I asked ChatGPT about the angle of these legs, they told me that it should be at 20 degrees. These ended up being at 10 degrees. 20 degrees would have literally made the table tip over. Now, when it comes to the videos, this is really my creative escape. I use AI almost every day at my day job, but using it here would kind of defeat the purpose. I love AI, but I don't use it at all for these videos. Well, except for Phil. That's totally AI. Oh, and the special sauce. My original plan here was just to glue these two pieces up side by side. But I pretty quickly realized that once I cut them down, it's gonna be a pretty thin table leg. So I opted to add a domino, hoping to get a little extra strength with the glue. And not that this is foreshadowing or anything, but I was definitely still a little bit skeptical at how much strength these are really going to provide. But I went ahead and got the bandsaw blade facing the right direction and started cutting them out. One thing that can be difficult when you're starting to design a new project is how much focus and emphasis you put on each individual part. Obviously, the tabletop on this project started out as the main focus. And when it comes to shapes and sizes, obviously the slabs dictated that for the top. However, the base and legs are a completely blank slate. I had a vision for these legs, but like I mentioned earlier, I honestly didn't know what they would look like in real life. I wanted something that was wavy but resembled a more organic movement. And obviously ocean waves come to mind, but then I saw my son playing with a bouncy ball. And my goal was to make a shape that resembles from the moment he drops it into the first two bounces it makes. Let me know in the comments if you think it worked. The last thing that I have to do with these legs is cut them to their final length, both vertically and horizontally. You probably noticed that I left these a little bit long on purpose so that when I was doing the template routing and the edge profiles, I had plenty of room to start and finish without messing anything up. Plus, now I've given myself the two spots where the ground will connect, which I can use against the fence to cut the top. And to do the horizontal sides, I can do the same thing with this cross-cut miter gauge. Getting back to the tabletop, you may remember that I had one final design detail that I needed to take care of before gluing it all up. And rather than doing the smart YouTube thing to build a little bit more suspense, I'll just tell you that I'm inlaying a patchwork pattern into the river portion of the table. I wish I had an image to show you that portrays the exact sort of design that I'm going for here. In fact, there is a designer and furniture builder that I pulled a lot of inspiration on for this quilted pattern. However, when I reached out to ask if I could credit them and show a little bit of their work in my video, this is the response I got. Now, before we start guessing names in the comments, I absolutely am not going to reveal who this is, but I promise it's probably not anyone you've ever heard of. Anyway, to sort of simplify what this design is supposed to be, I started with my Bamboo Lab 3D printer to create a bunch of templates that are squares and rectangles of different sizes. Then I can use my router and an inlay kit to start cutting out the squares and the spaces that they're going to go. Now, to get the look that I'm going for, I'm going to have to do a couple rounds of this because there's multiple layers and patches that overlap. Obviously, this is pretty abstract, and the patches can really go in any configuration. However, there is one rule that creates a little bit of a method to the madness and keeps it from looking terrible. All of the patches need to be inlaid at the same angle, and because there's no straight edges to work off of, I had to take quite a bit of time to mark all my layout lines. I've got my first set of patches down, but the thing that makes this pattern interesting is the way that the next set has to overlap these. And because these first patches are sitting up proud a little bit higher than the current surface, I need to mill them down to get them flat before I can put the template on for the next set. I decided the way to do this is to set up the slab flattening sled again to take most of what I need to off, then I can sand it down to be perfectly flat. And once that's done, I feel pretty comfortable with the whole process and I can just start batching these out and inlaying them pretty quickly. All right, so you may be asking why. Why in the world would you inlay these patches when technically they aren't really needed? I know everyone has their opinions about this design, but I really did have a reason for doing this. Or at least I found one, because I will admit that I planned on doing this before even realizing why I was doing it myself. So here it is. One of the main reasons why I never wanted to use another piece of wood in between two slabs is because I knew that the grain in the middle piece would not look very natural when I cut it to the shape of the live edges. And that's really on display here because you can see that the grain in this piece of wood isn't really following the new edge that I've cut. This is one of those situations where instead of just trying to make it blend in, you can actually use a whole new design element to completely hide it. So you'll notice that I'm strategically placing a lot of these patches directly over where the grain is being cut off by the new edge. Plus, I was able to find the angle that this grain is running through the wood at, which is the same angle that the patches were put down. And lastly, to keep it interesting, I used both curly maple and bird's eye maple. As you know, this is my second version of a No Epoxy river table, and I certainly don't plan on this becoming the No Epoxy river table channel, but I think it's safe to say that maybe I found a little bit of an obsession. I think it's because of the way that these projects tend to challenge me creatively. And trust me, doing epoxy pours is definitely not the easy way out. But at the risk of sounding so arrogant, this feels more innovative. I'm not trying to say that I'm the first person to put a piece of wood between two slabs, nor will I be the last, and I'm definitely not the best. I'm just having fun trying to be creative and a little bit innovative. Speaking of innovation, by now you've likely noticed this green laser alignment and laser tape measure that I've been using, and I'm sure you're thinking, what the heck is that thing? At least that's what I thought the first time that I saw it. And I cannot begin to explain how excited I am to show you one of the coolest tools and innovations I've seen in a long time. This is the Mileseey XTAPE1. It's not just a tape measure, it's not just a digital laser, and honestly, it's more than those two things combined. It has 11 main functions, plus a near endless list of features and benefits. Obviously, you can use this as a more accurate traditional tape measure with the added precision of the green laser reference line. And with just one click, you can also switch to take measurements with the laser, which means you can accurately measure the length of walls and even get the square footage of an entire room. Earlier, you saw me using a function called included angle, which allows you to find a perfect angle on any workpiece. And honestly, this is the only way that I could find the 4.1 degree angle consistently so that I could lay the patches down at the same tilt. You can also use this on a tripod to display the green laser alignment at basically any angle that you want. But the function I need right now is called line split, and it shows the exact midpoint for any measurement. This is how I'm going to find and mark the center of the tabletop so that I can pin my circle cutting jig and start cutting this down to final size. And this thing absolutely nailed it. Perfect center, perfect circle. The XTAPE1 is literally the definition of innovation. I mean, we've been measuring things the same way since the first tape measure patent in 1868. I think it's time for an upgrade. Thank you so much, Mileseey, for sponsoring this video. Check the link in the description and use my special code 1938 to get 10% off of your XTAPE1. All right. We're finally back to the problem that I've been putting off for basically this whole build, which is these giant voids where the slab doesn't quite have enough material to meet up with the wood river. Now, at the top of the slab, there was enough material across the whole thing to get a good glue up between it and the middle piece. So now most of what I'm trying to do is a little bit more on the cosmetic side, which is just make sure that when you're looking at this table from the side, there's not a huge gap. And I'm gonna fix this similar to how I did the patches on the top. But with this, I'm gonna put the template on the bottom of the table and route into the side, so that way I can get a bigger, thicker inlay to strengthen the joint a little bit, but definitely cover up the empty space. Now, the obvious choice to take care of this issue would have been just to pour epoxy in these cracks. Now, this is not meant to be an epoxy-free project, but an epoxy-free river. And I know there's probably some of you that aren't going to like that very much. So with that said, the river portion of this table will have absolutely no epoxy. And instead, you can see that I'm carrying the patch pattern idea to the edge of the table as well. However, I know if there's one way to fire up a comment section, it's to call a video a no epoxy river table and then use epoxy. And unfortunately, I'm just not above that. So with really just one way to fill all these cracks and voids on this tabletop, I'm turning to TotalBoat. If you've made it this far into the video, first, I just want to say thank you. I truly appreciate you spending a few minutes to watch and support what I'm trying to do here. However, the analytics tell me that most of you aren't subscribed to my channel. And if you don't want to be, please know that I'm not trying to pressure you into doing that. But a lot of times people just need a reminder. So if you're enjoying this video, please like, subscribe, comment, I don't know, share with a friend. I'll take any support I can get. And again, thank you so much. I'm finally back to working on the base, and one of the last things that I have to do is connect all four of these legs together. Now, obviously, there's no way for all of these legs to just intersect with each other. So I'm gonna try something that I've done in the past, which is to create a center hub connector piece that all four of them can connect to. So now I'm gonna take a few measurements and sketch out exactly what needs to be cut off of this piece. Then I can take it to the bandsaw to make those cuts, and of course the oscillating sander to make them perfect. And once again, I'm using glue and dominoes to connect all of these pieces together. One thing that I've learned over time is to not throw away your scraps from certain pieces before finishing the project. This is something that I think a lot of people do, but I think it's mostly so that if they need to patch something up, they have the right species of wood in the right color, and they can match the grain to it. But this time I got lucky for a whole different reason. These legs have to be the weirdest shape I've ever seen, and because of that, gluing them up was going to be impossible. But having the perfect angle from the cutoff made clamping these up pretty easy. Unfortunately, that was the last easy part of these table legs. I think some people would have opted to do the edge profile on this piece before gluing up, but I always wait because it's easier to get a seamless transition if you route it after you've glued it up. And this is where I ran into my first problem. I just sort of assumed that I'd have plenty of room on the bottom of this base, and I didn't. So I ended up doing all of the shaping by hand, and I'm pretty sure this rasp is from like 2011, probably a Harbor Freight model, I have no clue. But it got the job done. Then it's right into challenge number 2 because these steel mounting plates that I'm using to connect the two pieces aren't big enough for the bolt to fit through. No big deal, we can fix that. But the challenges unfortunately don't stop there. As I'm putting on these mounting brackets and just sort of messing with the legs, I fear that my worry about stability might be coming into play because these things are a little bit more wiggly and wobbly than I want them to be. And I think that by adding some stretchers across these legs to tie it all together will make it much stronger. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut down a couple of boards to get started on this. Now, the one thing that's going to make this a lot stronger is not only tying each leg to the one across it, but also fortifying it in the middle. So where these two boards intersect, I'm going to cut the top half out of one, the bottom half out of the other to create a half lap joint. And to get all of these glued up in place, of course, I'm going to use the domino. This can be a little bit tough when you're so close to finishing a project and you honestly kind of feel like you're already done, just to realize something doesn't quite feel right. Now, this one for me wasn't really much of an option because I'm not sure why I thought those legs floating that high off the ground would be enough to support such a thick tabletop. But taking one extra night, in my case, to fix the problem was absolutely worth it. This is so much better. I feel really good about how secure the base is now. The last thing that I have to do before putting finish on both of these pieces is getting the bottom of the table prepped for the mounting plates and bolts that have to hold these two things together. Now, luckily, one of the templates that I had for the patches just happened to be the perfect size to make the recess for the mounting plates. So after marking those, I can just remove a little bit of material and that's ready to go. Then each of these mounting plates have 4 bolts that screw into a threaded insert. So I'm gonna use my Speed Tool drill guide to get a perfectly straight hole that I can then put the inserts in. And now we are officially ready for finish. As many of you know, I'm a pretty big fan of Rubio Monocoat. I like how it's applied, I like the protection that it gives, and it looks amazing. So no surprise there that I'm choosing to use it on this project. But there is something a little bit different that I'm doing on this one. Rubio has quite a few options when it comes to the color or the hue of the hard wax that you use. Now this isn't really stain, it's much more translucent than that. When I'm working with a lighter color wood, I like to use the one called 5% white. On the other hand, walnut looks absolutely amazing in their completely uncolored finish called pure. So in my mind, on a piece like this with so much contrast, it calls for something I've never done before, using 2 different finishes. And this worked surprisingly well. The approach to this project is one of my favorite ways to work. Don't get me wrong when I say this, I love commission projects because they bring a lot of new challenges. But sometimes having no constraints and basically no one to please can really open the possibilities to create whatever you want. So this table is going to be for sale, more information on that in a second, but first, there is one opinion that I really care about.
Wow.
How'd we do?
Wow, dude. The 3D dimensions here with the bird's eye maples intense.
You look like an artist in this one. I love it.
You haven't noticed the one thing that you kept asking about.
Which was what? I don't remember.
How I was going to fill this crack.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like the equivalent of putting a bow tie on the top.
It is.
But people are going to be able to see how intricate that is until you get close. Is there any epoxy on the table?
Yes.
Where is it?
These.
The black.
The cracks. Don't worry, we'll fire up the comments with those.
Yeah.
Pretty wild?
Yeah, pretty wild.
Saucy, you might say?
Super saucy. Super saucy.
If you were one of the many commenters who said you needed a no epoxy river table with more contrast, it's time to put your money where your mouth is, because this thing is for sale. I'll link to my website in the video description, or reach out to me on Instagram if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, here's 2 more furniture builds that I think you'll like.